Bubba Wallace continues to land major sponsors. Meanwhile, several big teams announce crew chief swaps right before the start of the season. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope you're having a fantastic week. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. The season opening LA Clash is just over a month away, so expect things to pick up immensely. Lots of big stories coming this year. We'll be here at Out of the Groove to cover them all. With the holidays now pretty much over, we're a few days removed from New Year's. This week, a lot of people are going back to work. Things are beginning to move and shake in the NASCAR world as well. Today, a couple big teams announced crew chief swaps only about a month before the season, and Bubba Wallace revealed a familiar new sponsor that will be joining 23XI. Let's begin with the crew chief news, react to that. Let's start with the Xfinity Series. Luke Lambert will move over to Junior Motorsports. He will be Noah Gragson's crew chief this season. He's taking over the role that was previously held by Dave Elenz. Elenz, as we already talked about, is going over to Petty GMS to be Eric Jones's crew chief next season. Luke Lambert will now be the guy on Gragson's pit box. He's a NASCAR Cup Series veteran. He's been a crew chief over at Richard Childress Racing for many years. Most recently, he was with Roush Fenway. Now he goes back to Chevrolet, this time the Xfinity Series, to work with Noah Gragson. If you're a Noah Gragson fan, I think this is exciting news. Like, sure, for a young driver, we want consistency. It's nice to have a familiar voice in your ear, year in, year out. But in the case of Noah Gragson, he's going into his 4th full-time season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And on top of that, he's expected to make, 11 or 12 Cup Series starts for Colleague? This is going to be the biggest year of Noah Gragson's NASCAR career yet. And so having a Cup Series veteran like Luke Lambert, who's won a race in the Cup Series with Ryan Newman a few years ago, having someone with that experience, that poise on your pit box, I think that will actually help Noah Gragson. Like, we all remember this back and forth between Lambert and Newman a few years ago. He doesn't take anything from hot-headed drivers.
Therefore, we appreciate your positivity. Just gotta accept the facts eventually, bud. Look, bud, it's one team. We're all in it together. I know you only got one more week, but it's time you start being a part of it. Being a part of the lie or being a part of the positive towards the negative? I don't get it. There's one difference between constructive criticism and being Ryan, and you know the difference. I'm positive it's the worst car I had here in 5 years, so there you go.
I think it's good for a big personality like Gragson to have someone who can kind of match that if needed. Gragson's been good the last couple years. He won twice in 2020. He won 3 times last year in 2021 and actually made it to the championship 4, but he's still been plagued by inconsistencies on the racetrack. Like last year, he had 8 DNFs. Bring in a guy with Cup Series experience, hopefully that reverses that trend, because Noah Gragson this season should be one of the top 3 or 4 championship contenders in the Xfinity Series. Now that Austin Cindric is gone, Harrison Burton is gone, Chase Briscoe's obviously gone, like, who are the top contenders next year? Obviously AJ Allmendinger, Daniel Hemrick, the defending champion, although he's switching teams. Ty Gibbs hasn't confirmed he's running full-time, but most people expect him to be full-time. He'll be a contender. But then, Gragson should do better than Justin Allgaier, Sheldon Creed, Austin Hill with RCR. I expect Gragson to be better than them. Josh Berry going full-time will be interesting, but Gragson has more Xfinity experience. At least he should be better than, like, Gragson should be a championship 4 driver next year, and he should look like that all season long, not late in the year. I'd like to see a full season of consistency from Noah Gragson. It's gonna be tough because he's gonna be running a lot of Cup races as well. His focus will be diverted elsewhere. That's why I think it's good to bring in Luke Lambert, a guy who's been doing this a while. He's been in the Cup Series for a while. Like, no disrespect to Dave Elenz, he's been great, but he had only been an Xfinity Series crew chief and had only been a crew chief since like 2015. Lambert's been doing it longer. He's been doing it at a higher level, or at least in a higher series, you could say. I think this will be a good pairing, and it will be good for Noah Gragson's development. Now let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series, because Stewart-Haas Racing announced a major crew chief swap as well. Drew Blickensderfer is leaving Front Row Motorsports and will be Eric Almirola's crew chief this season. Mike Bugarevich, who was Almirola's crew chief this past season, will move into a performance director role within SHR. Meanwhile, Front Row Motorsports says that they will announce a new crew chief for Michael McDowell at a later date. But Blickensderfer has been reunited with Almirola in a way. The two worked together briefly at the end of 2016 and then throughout most of the 2017 schedule, with of course Almirola missing some races due to injury mixed in there. So the two have worked together directly back during their Richard Petty Motorsports days. This is an interesting move as well. I like it more for Drew Blickensderfer than I do for Eric Almirola. Like, say what you will about Stewart-Haas Racing struggles last season, but they're still a really good team, and obviously they're a team with more resources than Front Row. So for Blickensderfer to go from Front Row, a smaller team, to arguably one of the powerhouses, that is a promotion of sorts. And Drew Blickensderfer did great things last year to, in many ways, earn this promotion. Obviously, last year with McDowell, he won the Daytona 500. I'll slip in that that's his second Daytona 500 win. His first win ever in NASCAR was with Matt Kenseth in 2009 at the Daytona 500. But last year, he helped lead McDowell to McDowell's best season ever. He had 5 top 10s on top of that Daytona 500 win. They began last season with a first place in Daytona, an 8th place at the Daytona Road Course, and then a 6th place at Homestead, Miami. Like, Drew Blickensderfer and Michael McDowell never fell out of the top 20 in traditional points last season. For front row motorsports equipment, that is remarkable. McDowell deserves a ton of credit, but I think Drew Blickensderfer, who's been around, I mentioned he won the Daytona 500 in 2009. He's been around. He had something to do with it as well. I don't know if or by how much he will improve Eric Almirola's performance this coming season. Almirola struggled throughout most of 2021. He broke through to get that win at New Hampshire, but aside from that sudden peak, the rest of this season was just muddied by inconsistencies, DNFs. The cars were bad. I think Almirola was putting more pressure on himself to get the most out of the cars and was leading to more mistakes. It was just a bad deal all around. We've documented how SHR was just a non-factor most of last season outside of Kevin Harvick, who still went winless. I think SHR as a team will turn things around a little bit in 2022 with the new car that everyone's basically getting. I mean, everyone's getting the same basic chassis. I don't know if SHR will do better next season or will continue to be kind of in limbo. That's still a huge unknown and is making it very difficult to predict this coming season. But regardless, Eric Almirola and Drew Blickensderfer have a history together. They're both veterans. I think this will be a decent pairing. And Mike Bugarevich, who's been with SHR for a while now, moves into a higher role. I mean, this just makes sense. This is how the pecking order in the NASCAR world seems to work. I think it's fine. Share your thoughts down below. Do you think this is the right call for Eric Almirola and Stewart Haas Racing, bringing Drew Blickensderfer in? Who should front row get to replace Blickensderfer for Michael McDowell? Leave a comment down in the comment section below. Now let's talk about a major sponsorship announcement. That's right, Bubba Wallace is at it again. Bubba Wallace and 2311 Racing deserves a lot of credit for this, but today they introduced a new sponsor for the 2022 season, and it's a familiar sponsor to longtime Bubba Wallace fans. Leidos, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is back. They will sponsor Bubba Wallace on the 23 car this year, beginning at Auto Club, which I believe is the second race of the season. Look at this car. I love a dark purple base paint scheme, as I've said many times before. This looks great. I like the colorful angles that they've added as well. It really complements the purple nicely. My only gripe with this scheme is, why is the Leidos logo so small? They moved the door number forward so that they could make those logos bigger on the side, and Leidos doesn't seem to be taking advantage of it. Usually when I see a paint scheme like this, I think it's the fault of the sponsor more than anything. They have very strict brand guidelines. Like, I love in the past how Monster Energy, the green M has to be on a black backdrop. Like, that's messed with a lot of old Kurt Busch paint schemes. Every brand has very strict guidelines that teams and designers have to adhere to. I imagine in this case, that's what happened here. Still a good looking car overall, but I don't like that blank space over the rear wheels. Ugh. It's similar to, the last time Bubba Wallace drove a Leidos car, which was in the Xfinity series back when he drove for Roush in 2016, 2017. Look, the Leidos logo on this car is pretty small as well, even with the door numbers centered. So maybe it's just Leidos. They like minimalist design. I don't think that's even what that is. I don't know. It's a nitpick. Overall, the car looks good. Leidos will be on the car beginning at Circuit of the Americas at the end of March. But yeah, a couple reactions here. First, it's cool to see an old Bubba Wallace sponsor come back. It's kind of ironic because if you remember, Bubba Wallace's time at Roush got cut suddenly short, mainly due to lack of sponsorship funding, but it doesn't sound like that was on Leidos. They were doing what they could to keep Bubba Wallace on the track, but it's cool to see them come back not only into NASCAR after basically being absent for a few years, but also come back to the same driver. Familiar name, a familiar face. It's cool to see something that sort of resembles loyalty in NASCAR consistency, if you will. But on the other hand, while it is great to see a sponsor return, it's weird because this announcement comes on the heels of the news a couple weeks ago that M&M's will be leaving Kyle Busch after this season, leaving NASCAR altogether. And as we talked about then, that's a major consumer brand that you, me, we can just go to the grocery store, go to the gas station and pick up some M&M's, pick up a Twix bar, easy peasy. It's a consumer familiar brand. Leidos, I don't know what they do. I can't buy Leidos, I don't think. If I own a business, maybe Leidos does something I'd care about. What are they? And according to their tweet, they're a Fortune 500 technology, engineering, and science solutions and services leader. Great, I'm sure they do very important work, but as a consumer, as an average guy, I can't really do anything with Leidos. So like if I see their logo out in public, what's that gonna do? I don't want this to come across as bashing the sponsor. Absolutely not. Thrilled to have Leidos in the sport, thrilled to have them sponsoring a good team, but this is just one way modern NASCAR looks different than the NASCAR of 15 or 20 years ago, when most of the big sponsors on the biggest teams were consumer focused. Lowe's, Home Depot, anyone pretty much can drive down the road to their local Home Depot and pick up a DeWalt power tool, go to the Hooters across the street, order a Miller Lite. Like, there's less of those sponsors in NASCAR today. And I do think that makes it a little harder for new fans to truly latch onto a team or driver when the sponsor, the paint scheme isn't super familiar. Anyway, it's a little thing, but it's just something that came across my mind. Again, I don't mean to use this as an opportunity to bash Leidos. Very happy to see a familiar sponsor return to a driver. The colors on the car look great. This is just something I observed. Now, let's talk for a moment about Bubba Wallace and his 2022 season, because Bubba Wallace, once again, looks like he's gonna be pretty much fully funded. Don't know exactly if or for how many races DoorDash will be back for this coming season, but we know McDonald's has expanded their partnership with the team. They're gonna be his Daytona 500 primary scheme. They'll be on Kurt Busch's car as well. Wheaties, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, is coming aboard for at least some races. Again, don't exactly know how many. Root Insurance still seems involved with Bubba Wallace. I'm sure Dr. Pepper will still be involved. So Bubba Wallace is going to be colorfully funded next year. He'll have a ton of major brands on his race car, which means he doesn't need to worry about stability, for at least for the time being. Like 2311 Racing is not going to drop Bubba Wallace anytime soon. From a performance standpoint, this is a very important year for Bubba Wallace. For the first time, really, in his NASCAR Cup Series career, he will have a true teammate. Sure, last year I'm sure he was involved in some of the Toyota meetings with Kyle Busch, Hamlin, Bell, etc. But this year he has a legitimate teammate who's also under the 2311 Racing umbrella, Kurt Busch. It's a champion. Kurt Busch is going to be an incredible resource next season. We saw over the last 3 years how quickly he turned around Chip Ganassi Racing's performance, how he suddenly turned that one car into a legit contender. Kurt Busch may be a little older, maybe he's just past his prime, but he is still a fantastic race car driver, and more than likely he's gonna outrun Bubba Wallace most of next year. Or this year, I guess. But Bubba Wallace should not let himself get dejected. He's an emotional guy. I feel like it will be easy for Bubba Wallace to look up at the standings in June and see that, oh man, I'm stuck in 19th and Kurt's up in 8th. Man, we have basically the same equipment. Why is he doing so much better? Like, it'll be easy for Bubba Wallace, I think, to get down on himself. But like I said, if that happens, he should not feel dejected. Again, he has the sponsorship support. 2311 Racing is not kicking him to the curb anytime soon. Lean on Kurt Busch for information this year. Bubba Wallace is only 28 years old. Greg Biffle was a Cup Series rookie in his early 30s. Wallace still has a long career ahead of him. This year is going to be a great opportunity to learn, to improve with an all-new car. Don't get dejected if you're consistently being outrun by a former champion. Learn from Kurt Busch, take advantage of his wisdom. That's what Bubba Wallace should do next year. Obviously, you want the results to be good. I think they'd like to make the playoffs. They won a race last year. I think they'd like to win another race this year. Obviously, there are some actual hard goals that you still want to set and try to achieve for yourself. But with all this sponsorship support, Bubba Wallace can afford at least to use this year as a learning year. In 2021, they showed steady, albeit somewhat slow improvement throughout the season. Keep that trend going in 2022. That should be the main goal for Bubba Wallace next year, now that funding doesn't seem to be a huge problem. Anyway, y'all, that's all I've got to talk about on today's episode. Let me know what you guys think about Leidos returning to Bubba Wallace, what you think of that paint scheme, what you think Bubba Wallace's performance will look like this coming season. I'll give you guys some of my 2022 predictions here before too long. Today was just a teaser, if you will, but that's gonna do it for this episode. Again, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. As always, a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this show without your support. I greatly appreciate it, especially here in the new year. It really means a lot to me. We'll be back soon with more NASCAR stories to discuss. Now that the holidays are over, things are picking back up, and I think the ball will only roll faster and faster the closer we get to the start of the 2022 season. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you again very, very soon.